song of Jack the Ripper. So there's possibly going to be 3, 4, or maybe 5 parts. We don't know yet.
Yeah. We're having our little bit of Dutch bro sandwiches. Yeah.
So pardon us on that note. But we're going to do trying to get part 1, part 2 done today. Hopefully we can get all the parts done. We're going to do what we can. But we have to, we don't record anything else until later anyways. We'll see how far we can get today. We might get 3 done today.
And by the time we watch
the other ones,
we'll be in our new house. That's right, guys. I bought a house.
Me
and Justin bought a house, but I bought a house.
So, and we'll be helping them. We're gonna get a room. Yeah, by the time we move, we'll be moving. We are moving with them as well, but we're just going. Like you said, is by the time you see this, we'll all be there. We'll be in Kansas, and we'll be working on getting our room put together and ready.
Yes.
So we pre-recorded a lot of cases.
Granted, we did think that we were going to be moving at the end of April, beginning of May. Our timetable has moved up. We have moved in. We are moving at the end of March.
So yeah. So again, like you said, by the time you see this, they'll already be moved into the house, and then we will be there as well. We just won't be ready to do more videos yet, probably until June. Because right now this would be popping up in May. So we'll say probably June. Maybe beginning of June, something like that.
I think it's like the 2nd or 3rd week of June.
Yeah, we'll go back to doing live again.
And we'll have our own office, and we'll have it painted and everything like that.
Yeah, we're gonna decorate it. Maybe have new seating. We'll see what happens.
There's a chair that she really wants.
And for those that know me, you'll know what chair. It's the big old Parison chair.
Yeah.
But it's not the round one. This is more oblong. That's more.
And it literally can turn into like essentially a cradle.
Yeah. So I told her on some of them I might be going, hi. They just look so soft. So Jack the Ripper, we're pretty much, what did you say?
Part 1.
Part 1.
We're going to focus. So this is going to be every episode is going to talk more about like one victim in particular. I'm not going to do like all the victims in succession. We're going to focus on the victims one by one, how the bodies were found, everything like that. And because there are quite a few things that I am confused about how he could have done what he did. Because we're going to talk about what Whitechapel was at the time, because I think a lot of people are like, if you know the Jack the Ripper case, you might go, well, how could he get away with that? He had to have been covered in blood. We are actually going to talk about that. So,
and not only that, I think you said this was like 50 plus pages.
53 pages.
53 pages. So each part is going to be like 10 pages.
Yeah.
We're going to do 10 pages at a time. So that's why we're saying it might be a 5-parter.
Yeah.
If it is, that's fine. But like I said, we're going to do as many as we can. Get it recorded, get it uploaded for you guys. It'll still be like the same episode. This is episode 58, I believe.
But it's going to be
But it's going to be done in parts.
So for me, it is important that you also not just understand Jack the Ripper, but you also understand what was going on at the time. Where Whitechapel was, what Whitechapel was, the important thing. Because I think a lot of the times when we hear the Jack the Ripper case, we don't understand the context clues of the time.
I'm excited for this case because I'm very curious about Jack the Ripper. Because I grew up hearing about Jack the Ripper, but like she said, never understanding. And I think at the time too, I was young, so why would they want to explain it to a child?
Yeah.
At the same time. So I'm very excited about this case because this was one that I brought to her attention. Like, we should do one about Jack the Ripper because I'm really curious.
Jack the Ripper was always going to happen. It was just a matter of when. And I thought, why not pre-record it?
They're just gonna. Sorry, it's gonna be a lot.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking. There are supposedly other victims. There are people who they theorize are Jack the Ripper victims, but they are not a part of the canonical. So you'll hear with Jack the Ripper case, the canonical 5. There are other victims that they say could be Jack the Ripper, but they are not a part of this canonical 5. They're not officially attached to Jack the Ripper. So we are only going to be talking officially about the canonical five, which are for sure Jack the Ripper killings. Because again, we all know when something popular happens,
Willow.
when something big happens, people are awful, and sometimes you get copycat killers, especially in the 1800s. So these particular murders were officially claimed, they're officially done by Jack the Ripper. So hence why canonical five.
And we
So
kind of set this way because the time that we're doing this is early.
yeah,
It's definitely before noon. And with the sun, the windows being open and stuff like that, there would have been a bad glare. So,
which I will also say with these canonical fives, I do believe there are other victims. If we ever find them, I don't know. But just simply the way he killed, how he killed, there is no way he just stopped out of nowhere. And there is no way he just began doing this out of nowhere. There's the escalation
there's
from one
always a
point to
reason.
another. Yes, there
There's
is.
always a reason why somebody goes into this
And we've been talking about
chaos.
escalation.
Uh-huh.
And his first victim, there's no way that that was the start of the escalation. There's no way.
There has to be something else behind it for
Yes.
him to sit. Again, every case that we have done, if you have not seen anything of our previous cases, please go back and watch. We do a case a week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we'll find different ones that she'll find some. I'll send her information on Facebook and Messenger or what. I don't get on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't do TikTok. I have it, but I don't get on it. But I will find things on TikTok, send it to her, or I just send her a text. But
Yeah.
we do a case every week that we find something. I know I found one that I would like to do, or at least give it to you and look into it, because she's more of the researcher than I am. Every time I have a case, what is it? The last minute, I was like, oh, I found her. I'm
Day
a
of.
procrastinator because there's so much to do. I have I shouldn't procrastinate with do cases. That's why she does all the research. So there's a few cases that I've come across. You know, like
Yeah.
we do a lot of just a little bit of a background of our channel if you're new to it. We do true crime cases. We also
Yeah.
do cases on history.
Yeah.
You know, what we did on Titanic, we did the Oklahoma City bombing.
Yeah.
You know, and we won't repeat those. Those won't be repeats.
No,
It
and
might
then
it might be like every 5 years or when it's like the anniversary of it, where it's whatever.
during Black History Month too, we also talk about crimes that relate to like injustice and things like that. And the
Hmm.
only reason we're pre-recording this in February, so Black History Month is like in the forefront of my mind. And I think in February we did these two past cases. One where it was obviously racism affected the case,
Yeah.
and second of all, again, racism affected the case. Except one was being accused with murder, and the other one was a victim.
Yep. So
So
that's pretty much a little background
yeah.
of our channel.
And
It,
so, remember how I mentioned people are awful, copycat killings?
mhm.
People are also awful, and much like what has happened in the past in many of our previous cases, people wrote fake letters. So, we're actually going to be talking about the Jack the Ripper letters and the authenticity of them
Okay.
and the argument of the authenticity of them. We will also be giving, because Jack the Ripper has not been caught, it has not officially been found out, they have not identified him. We're going to talk about a lot of different theories as to who Jack the Ripper is.
Yeah, because I sent her one on Facebook. I was like, hey, they have this person.
So, Whitechapel in the 1880s was a place that was well known mostly for Jack the Ripper, but other things, primarily workhouses. And we are going to talk about more in depth about what workhouses were and how awful they were. And the conditions of these workhouses. They were just terrible. And you will also see many of our victims were hopping from workhouse to workhouse.
Okay.
Um, the reason I'm going to talk about this is because they worked with them or interacted with them, so it's important context to understand these workhouses. So Whitechapel, aka the East End of London. What do you think about when you think of London in the 1880s? That's just my question.
Well, back then they didn't really have electricity.
Yeah.
It was all gas, like lanterns, light lamps, candles.
But like when you think of London in the 1880s, what is the thing you think of the most?
I don't know, the livelihood, the aesthetic of the street, not aesthetic, but the streets, like I don't know what I would think. I mean, for me, it's like the clothing, the style, the way they live.
Yeah, like
It's all of that for me. That it's all of that because I love learning about that
yeah,
stuff.
bustling people, not the
Yeah,
cleanest, but like tolerable.
yeah.
Like
Like you don't not every corner is going to be clean. Not every corner is
yeah,
going to be perfect.
yeah,
You
but like
have your
it's kind of bustling. It's like a major city.
yeah.
That's the West End of London.
So they have two
That
different
was
ends.
yes. So that was the West End. That was the wealthy part of London. The East End. The East End was the total opposite.
It's kind of like almost like here. You have the north end. That's the richy rich.
Yes.
You live in a great community, and you go that. Oh, don't go to that south side.
Yeah.
Whatever you do, don't go to the south side. And I've been on the south side of quite. We've been on the
Yeah.
south side quite a few times. It's not that bad.
It's not.
Now the further south you go, maybe. But I mean, again, the times from the 1800s to the 2000s.
Yes.
Look at the difference.
Yes.
You got the difference. There's more homeless, which I'm not saying that there wasn't back
Oh,
then.
we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk a
Willow,
lot about that.
if you knock that over, I'm gonna
We're gonna talk a lot about that
put my
because
foot in your butt.
there was of course on like the West End, the Richie Rich section.
Willow, stop moving the damn camera.
There was of course
Come here.
alcoholism,
Come here.
drugs, things like that. But it was very much held underneath the light of colors and people, and there was money, and there was barely any homelessness on the West End. On the East End there was a lot of alcoholism, a lot of
Prostitutes.
yeah, a lot of prostitution, a lot of opium, a lot of diseases, the kind that killed, not the kind that was like you get sick and then you get better. This is like illness that sticks with you for the rest of your life and then you die from the illness or you die from complications of the illness. It was illnesses that killed slowly and painfully.
Wasn't there was some of the illnesses like it was the plague, black plague?
No, that's Black Plague is super super early. I think that's like in the 16, 15,
okay. I'm kind
16.
of going way back in time.
Think about TB,
Okay, tuberculosis, stuff like that. Okay,
tuberculosis, things like that. TB and consumption are the
consumption
same thing.
and consumption. If y'all don't know what that means, alcohol.
No, consumption is another name for TB.
Oh shit. Okay.
Consumption is
Because that's what I think it is. When you say
no.
consumption, it's alcohol.
Consumption is another what they used to call TB before they called it tuberculosis.
Wow.
Consumption is that title. It causes. That's why you'll see people coughing up blood when you're talking about consumption. They'll see that.
Mm,
Um,
something I learned.
yeah. But most died slow in the city. Not a lot of people died fast. A lot of people on the East End were dying slow. Everyone was dying. It just mattered at the rate of death.
Ugh.
Yeah.
So if your immune system was horrible, you're gonna go quick.
Yeah.
If
So-
it was I was like, yeah, all right, okay, nope, it's gonna take you
Kids
longer.
ran around with no shoes. Sometimes they didn't have clothes on either because their parents were too poor to afford it.
Streaking in the streets.
Yes, and it was common to see people running without clothes, shoes, kids to see them
Wasn't
running
that they
around.
were mad or insane?
Yeah, it
They
was
just
they could not afford
they
it.
couldn't afford clothes.
Most kids were severely malnourished because their parents were sadly coping with their problems by buying booze, spending all their money on booze. They weren't making enough to feed the kids.
Buying food.
Or they bought food, but they didn't have enough to buy enough food for everyone, so they would have to give smaller portions. It was very, very much a rough time.
Mm.
There was a lot of pain.
Oh yeah, sorry if you hear sirens, we just left the door open.
Yeah. So Arthur Morrison, of an English author, said East End was an evil plexus of slums that hid human creeping things.
Okay.
Yeah. Now Whitechapel was in the middle of the East End, and crime was normal. It was constant. You didn't want things stolen from you. If you didn't want things stolen from you, you wouldn't keep it at home because your home was going to get stolen.
Yeah.
Your home was going to get robbed.
Yeah.
Actually, most of the time in Whitechapel, there was no homes. You hop from home. We're going to talk about like it's not hotels that we know now and think of now,
Hostels.
and it's not
Are they
hostels.
hostels?
It's not hot. We will discuss. There's a special name for them,
Mm.
and they're really shady and sleazy. And you could, if you wanted to keep your possessions on you, you wanted to keep something, you kept it on you. So what's really sad is some of these victims, when they're found, they're wearing all of their clothes.
Oh wow.
They're wearing like 2 petticoats. They're wearing 2 jackets. They're wearing 2 things because that's all of the stuff they own.
Wow. And now these days, if it gets taken, it gets taken.
Yeah.
You have insurance.
And it can, yeah. Yeah.
Back then, they didn't have the insurance.
The city lights, city streets at night were dark. Now, I'm not talking like if we go to like in Arizona, you go out now in Tucson, you step out and there's light, you could still kind of see around you. I'm talking, you driven in, you know how Oklahoma is at night.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
How like
It's pitch
if you're
black.
driving in like the middle of Oklahoma, like in like a area where there is no cities around you, and it is pitch black, like your eyes are making things up in your head. That's how dark it was in the city of Whitechapel
Yeah,
at the time.
it gets pitch black.
It's pitch black, which brings up questions about how the Jack the Ripper did what he did in complete darkness.
And night vision goggles.
Yeah, that's had to be. Sure, they weren't invented for like another 300 years, but he was a time traveler.
Had to crack that joke. Wait, let me go back to this time and go get some night vision goggles.
Yeah, there was no lights. There were a few lamps that were scattered about, but they would be in like the busy populated areas and they would not shine light very well.
Yeah, because it was all gas lights.
Yeah.
It wasn't no electricity, no nothing like that. And
So these are what I was talking about. There were tenement homes, which were basically homes with multiple families that would live in one room together. So like if Michelle's family lived in one room,
we'd all be in trouble.
John's family would also live in that same room. They would pay the same amount of rent.
And there is no way we could all live with the size of my family and his family. There's no way.
People found ways. There were also workhouses, and so and again, workhouses, I will talk about them. They are a whole separate thing. But what we're going to talk about right now are DOS houses, which was what I was talking about. They're not hostels, they're not hotels. They're called DOS houses, where the poor would pay a pence and get a night in bed, but they only had the night. They had to be out by they would have to be out by like 7 a.m.
So it's almost like shelters.
Kind of.
It's almost like a shelter because if you think,
well,
but with shelters now you don't have to pay anything, but you have a night to be there, but you have to be out the next night, or you had to be there. You had to be at that place by a certain time to get a bed. That's what I.
Well, no, you could get a bed and if they had bed, you could get a bed at any point in time. If at midnight you had the pence and you didn't have the pence at like 10 o'clock, you could pay them the pence and get a bed. And you could sleep in that bed. And you oftentimes shared the bed was in a room with multiple different people. So it's kind of like a shelter, kind of not, because we're also going to talk about some of the things that they did that was kind of shady. In a survey done by Charles Booth that covered 1886 to 1903, and Jack killed in 1888, so this was in the time period, they found that 22% of the people that lived in Whitechapel was living below the poverty line, and another 13% were struggling to survive, and they did not believe a decent life was imaginable. So they did not believe that any sort of decent life was possible for them.
Okay.
To these family, their dreams were putting food on the table. Essentially, the idea of having an actual home and a normal life was something they couldn't even comprehend. Their dream was putting food on the table.
Right.
So the tenement homes, where people lived in, most of the people in there were sick with smallpox, tuberculosis, easily communicable diseases. So if you lived in one, you were getting those. But this is also the nasty part. They were not clean. They were not. It's not like shelters where they cleaned the beds and the sheets and they made sure. No, these were unlivable. Many of the beds, they shared the beds with black beetles and cockroaches.
Yeah.
Rats were everywhere, because these tenement homes, these DOS houses, these places were not cleaned. And the people who lived in Whitechapel at the time, most of them didn't have the energy to clean. Most of them, again, were sick and dying. They didn't have the energy to clean the home.
Yeah.
So the DOS houses were also called lodging houses, and you would have to leave during the day. So if you were sick or hurt or even old, they would just put you outside until it was dark, and you would pay them again another pence. Um, you couldn't keep your stuff there, so you had to take it with you. Some of the victims of Jack knew DOS managers and they had been staying there forever, paying night after night. And they wouldn't hold a bed for these people. Like they knew them. They stayed there night after night and they wouldn't even hold a bed for them.
It's like pretty much first come first serve type thing.
Yes. Um Robbing, stabbing, brawls, they were all normal. There were actually streets police wouldn't go down, or they would have to specifically walk in groups because police were too scared to go into these areas. So that's Thomas Arnold, police superintendent of the H division in the 1880s, said there is no doubt that whatever that vice is, its worst form exists in Whitechapel.
Mm.
So Whitechapel was the worst of the worst.
Okay.
For men at the time, slaughterhouses were a massive market, and a lot of men worked there in Whitechapel. There would be men walking around covered in blood because animals would be slaughtered out in the open. They would
Right.
have a table and then they would just cut up the animal covered in blood. So a lot of people are like, well, how could Jack the Ripper walk around if he's covered in blood? People were walking around covered in blood all the
So
time.
it's a normality for them.
Exactly. They were wearing their aprons when they slaughtered them. Men were walking around beat up with blood all over them because they were beaten or they had done the beating. So you can kind of see why no one notices a man covered in blood.
Yep.
There was also the mentality of keep to myself, don't be getting into other businesses. Um, if I see something, no, I don't. It's not my business. I'm just going to keep myself safe because I don't know what he's going to do to me. I don't know what they're going to do to me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Focus on myself, keep
Yep.
myself safe. And sadly, women turn to where they always turn to when there's nowhere to turn, sex work. And these women received the title of unfortunates.
Mm.
So they were called the unfortunate women or the unfortunates in general.
Okay.
Um, which by the way is kind of fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, they're still women, even if they have to turn to prostitution.
Yeah. And also, if you have such a problem with it, why don't you put in social programs to fix it? That's
Right.
just me.
Yeah. Come on.
For some of these women, sex work was how they made their money all the time. It was their full-time job. For others, it was something they did on the side while they did other jobs like being a dressmaker, a tailor, a laundress. Now, most of the time, if you're thinking about this, to be a tailor, to be a dressmaker, to be a laundress, you need a house, a roof over your head. You need a place to do laundry. You need a place to sew dresses. You need a place to be a tailor.
Yeah.
And a lot of these women didn't have a roof over
Mm.
their head in the first place. They were using tenement homes. They were using DOS lodging. Um, and they didn't have money that they could build up very easily to be able to put a roof over their head to get started. It was basically they once you got to a certain point, there was no going up.
Mm.
Um, some women sold paper and fabric flowers, and they would sell these. And a lot of these women were great at sewing and crocheting these things.
Yeah.
Now, you may ask if these people were poor and too poor to clothe their kids, why would they buy fabric flowers? And the answer is the people in Whitechapel didn't buy them. They would walk or travel to the West End
To get people to buy
and
it.
they would sell it in the West End. And then they would walk back to the East End and they would have the funds there.
Mm. Makes
So they
sense.
they traveled. Um because at the time the fashion was big hats and they would put the paper flowers or fabric flowers in their hats.
Mm.
Um so but you also have to remember it was also a luxury to travel because most of them would have to walk and it was like 4 or 5 hours walk, 6 hours walk. They'd have to start the night before. Or you took a carriage ride and it would take you like an hour to 2 hours. But you would have to pay for the carriage ride. So
Mm-hmm.
again, there's not a lot of
Wiggle room.
there's not a lot of wiggle room. Now, when it came to sex work, it didn't, as much as I hate to say it, cost anything. There was nothing that you had to pay for to practice sex work.
Huh.
The deed would take place anywhere, because they didn't go to lodging houses. They didn't go to a person's home. It literally would take place on the street. Some of these transactions.
Okay.
Um, they would the transactions and the deeds would happen in alleys, doorways, against the wall. There's a little bit of everywhere. And most of the time, these women were doing it so they could pay for a bed in the Doss house. Now, in a book called Jack the Ripper and the Case for Scotland's Yard Prime Suspect, there was a survey that said there was 128 brothels in Whitechapel and 623 active sex workers. And in Dabney, another part of East End, there were 932 active sex workers and 350 brothels.
Wow.
So sex work was a big form of the economy in Whitechapel. Everyone was struggling to survive, put food on the table, have a bed to sleep in. Um, there was a lot going on. And there were people trying to reform it. Now, some of their hearts were in the right places, but how it got put in place. So, there were social reformers who believed that sex workers were just morally bankrupt sex fiends and they were doing this because they wanted to do this. That they're like, they're just sex workers because they want to be sex workers. Or they need money to have a roof over their head, a bed to sleep in.
Yep.
I'm sorry. That's just fucked up. So at the Ripper murders, James Monroe, the police commissioner at the time, said this: "The only wonder is that the Ripper operation have been so restricted, there is no lack of victims ready yet for his hand. For scores of those unfortunate women may be seen muddled with drink in the streets and alleys, perfectly reckless as to their safety, and only anxious to meet with anyone who will help them plying their miserable trade." Now, if that doesn't make sense to that doesn't click as to what he's saying it's women's fault for being killed by the Ripper.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
He's saying, it's just these sex workers' fault, these unfortunate women. And it's their fault
Do you
they're
really
getting
think
murdered.
that they want to be sex workers? Do you really think they want to be doing prostitution to make money? No. It's
Also,
not their fault. If it's the only
I'm
job out there.
I'm just saying, would there be a sex work trade if men weren't buying?
Valid point.
Oh,
Snap.
got one on you.
You want to blame the sex workers, then don't buy.
Exactly. There would be no sex trade if no one was buying.
So thanks to men, you kind of keep it going.
Yeah. So you have a little background on that, and we're going to still talk about backgrounds. I'm going to talk about a victim, and that's when we're going to start talking also about workhouses. So Mary Ann Nichols, her nickname was Polly. So she is often referred to as Polly. She is his first canonical victim.
Okay.
So sometime around 3:40 a.m. on August 31st, Charles Cross was on his way to work as a cartman, which is someone who drives a horse-drawn carriage for the wealthy. And he worked in Bucks Row, which is in Whitechapel. And he passed some gates and saw along the side of the road a big tarp. But when he approached it, he realized it was a woman laying on her back. She was laying very close to the locked gate. And I will say that a lot of people with not just her, but a lot of the victims, they were seen laying on the ground and passed by with no question. Because most people were like, it's just a drunk woman passed out.
And that's been like in our previous cases.
Yeah.
As well.
So, and no one would check on him. They would just walk by. So he walked closer to get a better look and saw that she was still. Her skirt was hiked up closer to her hips, and another man named Robert Paul, who was also on his way home from work, or he was headed to work. There's some differentiating accounts.
Mm-hmm.
They came and saw her, and they felt bad for her because her dress was up to her hips.
Humiliation.
And she was cold in her face and her hands, and they couldn't see details because remember it's super super dark. And so Paul, because of how she was positioned, was worried that she had been SA'd. So he pulled her skirt down to cover up because he didn't want to leave her in the open like that. No, I'm
Good
not
for
going
you.
to. That's really sweet.
But don't touch the evidence.
Don't touch the body. Granted, back then, you know what? They didn't have DNA evidence. That's fine. Okay.
Now I can see why people didn't really check on her either, because
Yeah.
they thinking that she's drunk, passed out, but also you have tuberculosis or consumption
And
back then, and you don't want to touch somebody that has that
yeah.
because you can get it.
And most of the time, everyone had consumption because consumption, there's this idea that consumption was spread by touch. No, consumption is spread by
Coughing.
cough. It's being in the vicinity of somebody who's coughing.
Mm,
Uh,
makes sense.
yeah, so if you're near somebody who has TB and they cough for an extended period of time, you get a very high chance of catching TB. Fun fact, doctors, if they get a tuberculosis patient, they have to immediately be tested after they have the patient to get the baseline. And then 8 weeks later, they have to do another blood test to see if they have TB because TB takes 8 weeks to process in your system before you become it's your body starts showing symptoms that you have TB.
Oh wow! So they want to catch it ahead of time to see
Yeah.
what they can do.
And in the ER, just a regular hazard of working in the ER is tuberculosis. Because even though we don't hear about tuberculosis cases, it is still a really big disease that is spread around.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it is treatable now, it is still one of the most spread around diseases.
That's probably why I don't go to the hospital.
Yeah, it's actually really common,
I don't really.
especially among homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah, just fun little fact.
You're making your debut. Everybody, this is Willow. Willow, everybody. Even though she's looking out the door, not at the camera.
So they went to go grab a police officer. Now at 3:45, PC police constable John Neal was walking his beat through the Butts ground when he came across the woman in the street, and at the same time, Paul and Cross found police constable George Meissen, and they told him what they had seen, and
Not like the top.
he went to with them to see where he was, and he met police constable Neal. So Neal sent another officer who showed up at the scene with a Dr. Reese Lewin, and he arrived at 4 a.m. And this time, workers from nearby butcher shops and others were looking because everything was open. They could see there was this crowd. So people are curious, wanting to know what's happening. And Dr. Lewin can clearly see that the victim's throat was cut ear to ear, and that it was a deep cut. There were 2 slashes to her throat, though, that was 8 inches long and cut so deep it cut the vertebrae. All the tissues and vessels had been savaged in her throat. He then clearly states and made sure to say that these wounds were not self-inflicted, because I guess women back in the days would kill themselves by cutting their throat. So he's like making sure, he's like, hey, this is not a suicide. Do this to herself. This was done to her. Her eyes were wide and staring up at the sky, but not seeing anything. When the doctor felt her, he noticed her upper half was getting cold, but her lower half was still warm. So they estimated she had been dead less than half an hour before they got there.
Oh, wow.
PC Neal in his report wrote, I examined the body by the aid of my lamp and took notice of blood oozing from a wound on the throat, and she was laying on her back with her clothes disarranged. The woman was about 5'2" with hair that was brown but turning gray. She was missing 5 of her front teeth, and she was wearing a brown, red Ulster black Ulster coat, black ribbed wool stockings, 2 petticoats, and a black velvet bonnet that looked new. On the bands of her petticoat was the marking of the Lambeth Workhouse. So she had clearly been working for them because of these markings, and they decided to go there first to see if they could ID her. It was at somebody from the Lambeth Workhouse, a friend of Polly, that she had made, named Marianne Monk, who went to the morgue and ID'd the body as Marianne, aka Polly Nichols. So Polly was born August 26th in 1845. At the time of her death, she would have been around 42 years old. Her dad was Edward Backsmith, and her mom was Carolyn or Caroline, and she was a laundress. Her mom died when she was young, and so did her brother Frederick, who passed away when he was 2, which was common in most children. Most kids in Whitechapel did not survive past the age of 2. So if you survived past the age of 2, you already had beat. a lot odds.
Yeah.
She was one of three children with two brothers, Edward and Frederick. At 19, she married William Nichols. He was a printer on Fleet Street, Messer Perkins Backing Company. And in 1864, he printed out all kinds of things there: books, stamps, anything that needed to be printed, he did it. The couple lived with her dad for 12 years, and during this time, they had about 5 kids that would have been between the ages of 8 or 12 when she passed. So, after working really hard, the two of them could afford their own house. And in 1876, they were accepted into the Peabody buildings, which was a new set of tenement homes. And they were upscale and they only accepted working class people of high moral character. They were living a good life, and at one point, a widow moved in next to them with her adult daughter who had been separated from her husband, and her name was Rosetta. Now, Rosetta helped Polly with the kids while she was pregnant, and she was talking with William a lot. And Polly noticed Rosetta and William's relationship. And after their child Eliza was born in 1876, Polly began to drink gin, and the couple began to fight. Um, Gin became her poison of choice, and there were several times Polly would leave William to live with her dad, but she would always go back to William, and the fighting would continue until she walked out while she was pregnant, and she ended up at the Lambeth workhouse for the first time.
Mm.
And she spent some time working there near the end of her pregnancy, and she was worried that she would be separated from her baby at the Lambeth workhouse, so she actually went back to William. Now, those fears were not unfounded. Workhouses were known to take the babies from women who gave birth and keep the babies or give them to other people.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was not, yeah, that was stuff that had happened. So in 1879, she gave birth to a son named Henry. But then things started to go bad between the two again because they were fighting about his possible infidelity, and she left all her kids with William. She just picked up and left. She then went to go work at the Lambeth workhouse again. Now, I will note almost all of the Ripper victims are bouncing from place to place. They were not living in stable home environments. This whole case is surrounded by helplessness and desperation, which actually makes this case a little bit sadder. In 1843, so now we're going to talk a little bit more about workhouses, because I just told you that workhouses separate moms from their babies. You need to understand these workhouses were not good places, and that's just a little bit of how bad they were. In 1843, England passed a law that was called the Poor Law. It was made to seem as if they were trying to help and bring those in poverty back to work and help house people. With the creation of workhouses, it was supposed to be a sort of a leg up into society again. It was proposed as a way to get aid if you found yourself poverty stricken.
Mm.
It was essentially built on people's desperation. There was a power dynamic, and when there is a power dynamic, we know how people are.
Mm-hmm.
It always gets corrupted.
Yep.
With this law, the workhouses would establish where poverty stricken people could be housed, clothed, and fed, but in return, they would do hard manual labor things like breaking stones and other things like that. And when I say breaking stones, I mean actually that was their job. They would take stones and break them into gravel. So they
Okay.
would just hit a rock repeatedly until it made gravel.
Okay.
Um, and also kids would be put to work. So if you had kids, your kids would also be put to work. Now these people in these workhouses were often called workhouse inmates.
Mm.
And they also did something called bone crushing. This would manually crush the bones off of dead horses, cats, and dogs.
Okay.
And there were rumors that there was grave robbing happening and people were crushing human remains as well. Yeah. The workhouses were feared and avoided by many. Not only were they workhouse inmates, they were called prisoners in these workhouses. And the workhouses often considered these prisons for the poor, and the owners of the workhouses were like, yeah, this is a prison. You're stuck here for life. And when you have that, again, power dynamic, mistreatment happens. Families would be pulled apart and be forced to live in different parts of the workhouse. So men would have to sleep on this side of the workhouse, women would have to sleep on this part of the workhouse. Kids would also be separated, so the boys would sleep on this side, the girls would sleep on this side. They were not allowed to be together as families.
Mm, okay.
They had to wear uniforms and eat prison slop. They didn't get actual food.
Mm,
And upon entering the workhouses, they lost all voting rights.
mm,
The workhouses were mandated and they were set up in different parishes, and a parish was formed and broken into unions, not the kind we have today. The unions would help decide what kind of facility they intended to use and intend to build. They would ask how many inmates could be housed in a workhouse and each union assigned a guardian that would come and visit the workhouses to make sure everything was up to code. And the conditions were not so terrible for the inmates.
mm,
They were still terrible. There's actually a scandal around this time involving workhouses, and it's an important scandal because it kind of shows just how bad it was. Uh, it was called the Andover Workhouse, and it was run by a master of the house named
mhm.
Connell McDougall, who, as we would now call a sadist. He was a sadist in every sense of the word. He intentionally treated the inmates like shit, and he took the food intended for the workhouse and gave it to his own house. So they would get prison rations. They would get food rations from the government, and he would take the food rations that were supposed to go to the inmates and keep them in his own house and wouldn't give it to the inmates.
Mm,
Um, and he just liked watching people suffer. He refused to allow guardians into the workhouse, citing some sort of loophole. Sexual assault allegations were lobbied against him later. And when it became obvious the people in his workhouses were starving, like they were physically skin and bones,
mhm.
rumors began to swirl that people were fighting for the job as bone crusher so that people could eat the marrow from the bones and pick the rotting meat off the flesh to have something to eat.
Oh wow.
This was confirmed, so it's not a rumor.
Oh wow.
A man named Hugh Monday was a magistrate and a member of the overseers on the Andover board. He testified that it was true and he investigated it, and he testified under oath. And I quote, when a beef bone or chine bone was turned out of the heap, there was a scramble for it, and he said it was like a parcel of dogs, and the man who got it was obliged to run away and hide it until he had an opportunity to eat the marrow. One man fetched two bones, which he had eaten that very morning, in wet ashes. A portion of muscle, very offensive, was adhering to the end of the bone. The man said it was considerable time before they could make up their minds to do so.
Mm,
But after they had once taken it to that, they preferred that description of labor to any other because they could get to pick bones.
wow.
Basically, they found a piece of meat with like that really chewy muscle.
Yeah. So they were literally fighting for scraps.
They were
That's pretty
fighting for
much what that
scraps.
is.
Yeah. And he was like, that man then testified and said, I'll take this job over any other job because I can eat that muscle because I have no other food because they weren't feeding him.
Wow.
Um, the problem was there was some players that had conflicting interests in keeping over the Andover workhouse as it was. Eventually, the inquiry into its mistreatments and torture of inmates was just dropped. That did luckily make people look closer as to what was happening there. And the Poor Law Commission was basically running itself with no oversight at all, which was not working. A bunch of papers were reporting on it, and this brought forth the removal of Colin McDougall in Hanover, and the master of the house was replaced with just another asshole. Now, during this investigation, Home Secretary Sir James Graham was found to have told the commissioners to get the Andover scandal quieted and concluded quickly. This led the committee to being formed to take action and investigate the Andover workhouse situation for real this time instead of just dropping the inquiry.
Mm.
So the committee was horrified by the findings they found. The mistreatment, unfortunately, ended up being an all across the board situation when they started looking at other workhouses. They had to completely dismantle the Poor Law Commission at this time and changed it into a board that would have had a parliament oversight. It slowly got better, and eventually, around 1930, the entire law system was abolished, and that was again in 1930. So from 1880 to 1930, these workhouses were in commission.
Wow.
These terrible workhouses. So a lot of people, so people would be like during this time period, well, why didn't these victims just go to the workhouses? Do you want to work in a workhouse? Do you want to go to a place where you're called inmates? Where you're literally fed prison slop?
And then you don't get to be with your family? I don't think so.
Exactly. It was a matter of, do I stay with my family or do I get separated from my family?
I mean, some people will do what they need to do, which is understandable, but to be separated from your family, depending on the family,
Hmm.
um, like how bad is the situation with the family?
Hmm.
How horrible is it? Do you have one that does nothing but drink all the time or use opioids or stuff like that? Do you
Yeah.
want to be separated from that?
Yeah.
Understandable, but just to go into a workhouse so you have a roof over your head, but you're separated from your family,
Hmm.
no.
So these women, these victims, many of them went to workhouses.
Mm.
Many of them were in these places. And there's actually another job in the workhouses that I found after writing this, and it was called picking oakum. And they were untangling old ropes from ships.
Mhm.
And it was so tedious, it would make your fingers bleed.
Oh, kind of a rope was it?
It was a fishing rope.
Oh, wow.
And it was the kind of manual labor that they would make them do. And it was harsh and was intense and it would actually drive people mad after a month or so. Can
Wow.
you picture a month of every day? You get up at like 7 a.m., you start untying rope until 5 or 6 p.m. The next day you wake up, you start untying fishing rope
That's literally tearing your fingers apart.
every day.
So your little what do you call that? Fingerprints
Yeah.
are gone.
Um so remember how I said families were separated? Lambeth was on par with shittiness within workhouses in the 1880s. So Lambeth was no different. It was not one of like, oh, this is one of the better workhouses. No, it was just as shitty as all the other workhouses. This was not a pretty workhouse. Um,
You're lucky if you would have found one of those.
yeah, exactly. You were lucky. Um, so after she separated from her husband, Nichols was required by law to give her 5 shillings per week. Now, at the time of her death, he had not seen her for 3 years. And in 1882, he had found out through channels that she had been living as a sex worker since they had been separated.
Mhm.
And he was like, I'm not paying anything, and stopped paying the weekly allowance.
Mm.
And her friends told her that she needed to get a summons to get him back to pay what he was supposed to pay her. He's supposed to pay her 5 shillings a week. And she contacted a parish guardian of Lambeth, who also summon people when you need. They take care of legality stuff too.
Mhm.
So they summoned William to come testify as to why he stopped paying her weekly allowance. And after a bunch of witnesses were asked to testify about her street life, her moral character, the guardians agreed with William, reasoning for stopping his required payments, and basically said, yeah, you're right, you don't have to pay her anymore.
Wow.
So later, in 1896, after the Ripper murders, a 7-year-old boy named Charlie Chaplin would actually show up at the door of the Lambeth workhouse with his mother and brother after their father had abandoned them.
And yes, it is the one that you're
It is.
talking
It
about.
is Charlie Chaplin.
Who
So,
I like.
fun little fact about the Chaplin house, the Lambeth house. Chaplin was actually somebody who went to the Lambeth house. This was long after Polly, but still a little weird connection historically.
Yeah. So,
Um.
so yes, it is Charlie Chaplin.
So the fact he was raised in Whitechapel.
And it's like we're gonna have to do one on him now.
Yeah.
Because knowing that he has a connection, a little bit of a connection to this.
Mm-hmm.
Curious why? Why does Charlie Chaplin? Why did he have to go live in that area? Why did
Yeah.
he have to So another one.
So after losing her allowance from William, she tried to retain lodging in many different places around the area, but nothing stuck. She could get it for a night there, a night here. She stayed with her father for another stay, but her drinking caused them to have some issues. He said later he never threw her out, but there were times things got bad and she would leave. By this time, William moved in with Rosetta.
Okay, the one that.
That she was like, "You're cheating on me with Rosetta."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I'm not." Yeah, they moved in together.
So apparently you are
A liar.
liar.
She was pregnant with his child.
Well, that makes it even better. Big fat liar.
Now, Pauline bounced from workhouse to workhouse and lodging house to lodging house. And in 1886, her brother Edward actually died from a fire.
Oh,
His funeral was the last time her father saw Polly alive.
that's so sad.
Polly was drinking because she was depressed. So in 1887, she had been kicked out of a living situation with a man named Thomas Drew. They had lived together for a little bit, but she started drinking again, and he got tired of it and kicked her out. It was October, and she had to sleep outside in Trafalgar Square, which there was a lot of homeless people that would huddle together and sleep there during the colder months. And in October 29th, 1887, a bunch of people were arrested in the square. And in a newspaper article, it said that Nichols and 5 men and 2 women were charged with sleeping in the open air and wandering without visible means. So Polly got arrested in 1887 for sleeping outside.
Okay. There. Okay. My brain's gonna stew on that for a few. While she continues. It's so weird. Half of these cases I know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
I only know a little bit of things of what I've heard about Jack the Ripper and none of this stuff. But when she brings up crap like that, I'm all.
Yeah, that's right. You
It
could
makes
get arrested for sleeping out in the streets.
no sense. You're not doing anything. You're sleeping to stay warm. You're huddled with all these different people to stay warm. You're not bothering anybody. You're not asking for anything. You
Well,
just look guilty. Someone arrest you. Okay. That's why I sit here, and if you hear me say "okay" more than once, it is a hint of Michelle's gonna stew on this for a second, and when she comes to, but it does click with me because that to me that makes no sense whatsoever. But I will stew on it for a minute until she goes to say something else. I'll be like, that's fucking stupid.
yeah. So this got through to the other people that were actually sleeping there, and they all went to workhouses, or if they had somewhere else to go, they went there. But they were like, okay, we cannot stay in the square anymore. We cannot sleep in the square anymore together.
So, in other words, okay, here's where I chime in now because she told me that. So, in other words, it was a scare tactic.
Mhm.
See, that's why I stew on some things that she says because I'm like, okay, there's more to this of why they're arresting these people. And then right when she says, there it is,
Yeah.
there it is, it's a scare tactic to make it to where they have to go to these workhouses, to where they become prisoners or inmates, and they get separated from people.
But here's the kicker. Polly was listed in the newspaper article by name.
Oh darn!
And they said Polly
Uh-oh.
was the worst woman in the square and labeled disorderly.
Way to go, Polly.
Polly, an OG.
Yep. OG Polly.
Polly's like, nah, I ain't putting up with none of
no.
this.
Hell no. You know what's hilarious is if you watch cop shows and you see how disorderly the females are, we're like, you're stupid. Why would you do that? And then you have Polly here going, they ain't flying. No.
Yeah.
And we're all like, way to go, Polly.
She was released on her own recognizance before she went before the magistrate and was let off with a warning, but was forced back to the land bathhouse. She went back to her old stomping grounds, but she only lasted 10 days before getting kicked out.
Polly's gonna become the favorite of this topic. She's
so
like, I don't need you. I do it on my own.
So at the time, the rooms for lodging houses were 6 to 7 pence for one room one night, and you had to share with people. But there was a couple things you could do to pay less than that. And I'm going to list you some of the fucked up things that these lodging houses would charge.
Okay.
For 1 pence, homeless people could enter the lodging house and sit on a bench all night, but they were not allowed to sleep.
Oh, that's not nice. That's screwed up.
And for 2 pence,
Mhm.
they had a 2 penny hangover, which meant you could sit on a bench in a row next to each other, and they would hang a rope in front of you, and you could lean on the rope and sleep hanging over the rope. Hence, where they believe the term hangover comes from, is because many drunk people would just
Hang
sleep.
over the row. Oh my god, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm thinking that they put them in a row, so if they pass out, they go on lean on
No,
each
they would
other.
lean on a rope.
That's too funny.
No.
Oh
For
god.
4 pences, there was something called coffins, and you would sleep in a wooden box with a tarp over it, and it had bugs and other stuff in it because it was not protected and sealed.
Oh hell no. You wrap me up in that damn tarp, then put me in there. Mm-mm. No. Wow.
So, after being kicked out of the Lambeth house, Polly ended up sleeping on the square outside in December, and then she stumbled into the Mitcham workhouse in Holborn in January 4th, 1888. And at the time, she had a nasty cough and she was sick from
Mm.
sleeping outside most of December. And they sent her straight to the infirmary. So she went to a different workhouse, the Mitcham workhouse. And so they sent her straight to the infirmary, and she spent a good amount of time there. And in April, she was actually sent back to the Lambeth house because that was her home parish. And Holmborn didn't want to pay for anyone not in their parish.
So pretty much wherever they ended up the first time, that's their set.
Unless, like, they move. But because they're transient, they usually just go back to there.
Oh, okay.
She did pretty well at the time there. She was recommended by the matron of Lambeth as a future domestic servant for a couple, Francis and Martha Cowdrey, who lived in a newly built home in Ingleside in Wandsworth Common. And on May 12th, 1888, she left Lambeth and took the opportunity. So Martha and Francis, according to her, she wrote to her dad and told him they were very kind to her and they were good people. She was the only servant, and she was expected to cook, clean, keep the fires going, keep the chimneys clean, polish silver, run errands, do needlework, do needlepoint, laundry, and all the other small things that needed to be done.
This is giving me Handmaid's Tale vibes. Sorry. Not the rest of the Handmaid's part of it, but the fact of in that show, if you ever watched it, they were being prepped
Mm-hmm.
to do those things like that and more. So
And
she's
then you had the Martha, who was the domestic who did all of this stuff.
exactly. So
Yeah.
she's like the Martha.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna some of the cases to come across after all seeing all these stinking shows. I was like, oh, this is like Handmaid's vibe.
Yeah. In one of her letters to her father, she told him that this was her opportunity.
Okay.
Sadly, this did not last long. She left 2 months after, and she left with stolen linens that are valued at 300 pounds today.
Polly,
Yeah.
come
Miss
on.
Miss Crowdy reported her to Lambeth House, and Polly pawned the linens and used the money for gin.
Lady,
I know, she's an alcoholic.
there goes your kidneys.
She didn't know where to go
Your
because she couldn't
pancreas.
return to Lambeth, and so she turned back to sex work, and she managed to stay at lodging homes on Thrall Street and Flower and Dean Street at the time. Thrall Street was dangerous. It was one where the police wouldn't walk on their own. They needed to partner up. And she was staying at a Dawes house on Thrall Street the night she was murdered. Between August 24th and August 30th, Polly had a room at White House, which was on 56th and Flower Street in Spitalfield. And this is where people were servicing clients in alleyways and doorways, just right in the open. And people openly robbed passerbyers. Stabbings were an everyday occurrence in the street. It was also called Blood Alley, so it was pretty rough. It was a really bad part of town. And it was also called Do As You Please Street.
Okay, that's different.
At the time, she was sharing a room at 18th Row Street with a woman named Ellen Holland. Now, on August 1888, August saw Polly leaving the Frying Pan, which was a pub she frequented, around 12:30 a.m. And at 1:30, people saw her trying to enter the Dawes house, but the owner said no because she didn't have 4 pence. And she was heard laughing in his face, and saying, "I'll soon get my DOS money. See what a jolly bonnet I've got now? And she was showcasing her new bonnet. No one knows where she got it, where she got her velvet bonnet, the new one. No one knows where she got it, but all of a sudden she had this new velvet bonnet. And she's like, I got a pretty bonnet on now. I'm going to give my money for this Dasru.
And she's three
She's
sheets
drunk.
to the wind.
She's 3 sheets to the wind.
You can definitely tell when she starts laughing at a dude in his face. It's like, oh god, she's gone.
And then she ran into Ellen, who was a roommate at the Doss house, and she said, she told Ellen, she sat and they chatted for a bit, and Polly seemed happy and drunk. Ellen was like, come back to the Doss house, and Polly said, I've had my lodging money 3 times today, and I've spent it at the frying pan or the 10 bells. It won't be long before I'm back. She told Ellen and headed to Whitechapel Road. It was a short time later she was found murdered in Bucks Row, Whitechapel.
Oof.
So the last conversation she's basically had was,
A drunk
I've had
conversation.
my money 3 times today and I've spent it all on liquor. I'm going to give more money.
While she was drunk. So her drunken bender ended her bender.
Yes. So after the initial examination of the body, the doctor basically said she needed to be taken to the mortuary so he could do a thorough investigation. And they would actually take our body to a workhouse. That's where the nearest mortuary was one of the workhouses. So mortuaries were different than they are today. They left her in the opening, so they left her out in the open until 2 workhouse inmates came and picked her up and carried her. And the mortuary was a shed on the side of the road.
Mm.
It's not like today where they keep it cold and everything like that. It's just a shed. And she was stripped of her clothing, and that was when they noticed there was another gaping wound other than the one on her neck. There was a jagged gash on the lower left side of her abdomen. Her intestines are actually spilling out of the wound.
Ew.
Now, according to Complete Jack the Ripper by Donald Rumbelow, the abdomen had been cut open from the center of the bottom of the ribs along the right side under the pelvis. He left the stomach, yeah.
Sorry, I'm like picture like okay.
To the left of the stomach, there was the wound was jagged. The abdomen or fatty membrane, which covers the front of the stomach, was cut in several places, and there were 2 small stab wounds on the vagina. Just a heads up on all of these cases. They're gruesome and graphic. There were several incisions made in her abdomen, many of them very deep.
Mm.
She was moved to take off her clothing, and that's when they saw that blood had soaked her clothes and the pavement beneath her immediately. They actually thought the weapon was a blade around 6 to 8 inches long.
Jeez.
And they believed it could have been something like a shoemaker's knife. Marianne Ann Monk, who's Polly's friend, was the one who ID'd her, and she was the one who connected police with Polly's father and husband. Now, William,
if you want to call him a husband,
her estranged husband, came down, and witnesses said he laid eyes on her, and he was silent and stunned for a while. And after a while of staring, he said, seeing you as you are now, I forgave you for what you have done to me. Okay.
Dude, really?
Way to make it about yourself, my guy.
Thank you.
Your wife is dead.
Now your children have no mother, except for the woman that you cheated with.
What did she do to you? She started drinking because you started cheating on her.
Oh, William. You're not on our favorite list anymore. You were never on our favorite
heads
list.
up, I think there's a couple of men on here that are not on my shit list. Every man in this case is on my shit list.
William, you're at the top right now.
The doctor. Not this doctor. There's another doctor I do believe. Or it might be this one. He's the OG when it comes to this case. Like, he's like, listen here, guys. I think I have an idea on how to solve this case. And the police are like, you're just a doctor. You know nothing. And he's like, guys, I want to solve the case.
I do the autopsies. What the hell?
He's like, I want to help solve the murder case. And they're like,
you know,
shut up.
You know nothing, Jon Snow. That's that type of vibe.
Yeah, they're like, no.
Yeah, no. William.
So
we need to have a discussion with William.
He then turned to the doctors and said, well, there is a mistake. There's no mistake about it. It has come to a sad end at last.
At last? It's come to
a sad end at last. That's what he said to the doctors.
You, William, you could have been paying her penance where she could be living, where she would still be alive, and your kids would have a mother,
Mm-hmm.
not the 2-bit prostitute Rosetta.
Yeah. So this case was already kind of a big deal because she's laid out in the open. It's not like the others where they were kind of like they got stabbed and then they just like slumped over and were left where they were. This one was clearly posed. I mean, her skirt was up. She had clearly been dissected partially. Her throat was cut almost to the point it had severed her head. It was rough. It was also she was found under the windows of two women, a Mrs. Green and Mrs. Purkis, who were both at home, and at least one of them was awake when the murder happened.
And they didn't hear anything?
Yeah, they didn't hear anything. That meant that the killer was fast and effective to sever a windpipe so fast that they couldn't scream.
Oh, wow.
So whoever this is one of the reasons I say there has to be more Jack the Ripper
Willow, what are
victims.
you doing? You're driving me nuts.
This is why I say there has to be more Jack the Ripper victims because you
Yeah.
don't just learn how to sever a person's windpipe that quickly and that efficiently without having some practice.
Yeah.
You also don't know how to dissect a body without some medical knowledge
And see,
or practice.
and it always seems to come back to okay, for instance, the Black Dahlia, the case that we have done previous to this one. I mean, I already knew who it was because of the show Ghost Hunters. They kind of gave it away, but I already knew who it was. But it seems to me like some cases are somebody that has had medical background.
Yeah.
Not all of our cases, but some. It's like they've had medical background, or they had no medical background, but they dug it up. They did anatomy.
Yeah,
they studied. And it's like to be a medical professional at some point or in some aspect of the whole thing. So either way, I see you. Either way, it's more or less. There's always some type of medical background in a sense, because you do have sloppy killers that they do. I don't care. This is not going to look perfect. It's not going to look pristine. You got the ones that take the time to be pristine and to be like, okay, well, if I do this, it won't hit this. Like Black Dahlia. With Black Dahlia, that person literally
performed a medical procedure, by the
yes,
way.
they did, where they hit no organs.
I think it's called. I cannot pronounce it. It's called like a hemocroptomy. I don't know what it's called, but it is a medical procedure where literally you remove the bottom half from the waist down. It is a procedure that can be done.
So I mean,
to this day, it can still be done.
So it's like, yeah, I think almost all the cases that we've had, it's come down to somebody has studied some type of anatomy to be able to do it, or they worked in the medical field.
They practiced or something like that. Now, Thursday, September 6th, 1888 was Polly's funeral. William paid for it, but he
you'll pay for that, but you won't pay for her to have a place to stay.
He didn't go to the funeral.
You're an asset.
6 years later, he married Rosetta.
Surprise!
So
police,
sorry.
My nerves.
So police are at a loss for words because of how efficient it was. This dude would have been covered in blood. There was a couple of murders that the police looked at and they were like, are these connected to the murders? And these were like the two potential ones that they're potential victims, but not a part of the canonical ones. There are 11 they believe are tied to Jack total, but again, they're not exactly sure. So they're like looking at it and they're like, this is weird. So the Newcastle Chronicle and the Hull Daily Mail wrote articles claiming there were 6 Whitechapel murders. As we know, there was a canonical 5. But I am going to go a little bit on the first 2.
My question
I don't believe this one is a Jack the Ripper murder, though. I will say.
Because my question would be is if because normally, I mean, Jack the Ripper, when I hear that name, he's going to have the same type of murder style, or he's not going to have the same type of murder style with him being called the Ripper. Like, is his killings the same for each person? Is his killings different for each person?
We will talk
for each
about
person. That. Okay.
So this one, I do not believe she is a Jack the Ripper victim. Just simply because of her case, you'll see why. So there was Emma, as they cite. Her first name was Elizabeth Smith. She was attacked April 3rd in 1888, which is a few months before Polly. She was 45 at the time of her death, so kind of similar victimology. She was living at a Doss house at 18th Street in Spitalsfield. Not much is known about her other than she was a widow with two adult children. She had a tendency to drink a lot, and when she drank, she got into fights. She was seen with a lot of black eyes and other injuries because of bar fights or a fight in the street. And it was 12:15
Please no.
a.m. on April 3rd when her friend and fellow lodger Margaret Hayes saw her speaking to a man dressed in a black suit with a white handkerchief around his neck. She said he was of an average to medium build, and she could not ID him if she saw him. She was speaking to him in the area of Farrant Street, Limehouse, and it was shortly after that something terrible happened to Emma. Now, initially she survived, but she was badly injured. Around 4 or 5 in the morning, she stumbled back to the lodging house at 18th George Street, and the deputy at the lodging house, Miss Mary Russell, immediately saw she was in terrible shape. Also, heads up, you're going to hate the English police after this case. Her face was a bloody mess, and her ear had almost been completely cut off.
Oh.
She had told her she had been SA'd and robbed on her way home to Osborne Street, and she was in a lot of pain in the lower half of her body. And heads up, this one is particularly gnarly. It was found she had walked a quarter of a mile from where she was attacked, and it took her 4 hours to walk it.
Hmm.
She passed multiple police officers, none of which she asked for help, and none that asked her if she needed help. Now, with these wounds I'm about to tell you, you can clearly tell that there would be something wrong with her.
Yeah.
It was discovered by George Hapslin, who was the surgeon on duty when she arrived. Aside from her facial injuries, she was suffering from a lot of internal damage. They found a blunt instrument had been forcibly inserted into her, hard enough to cut the perineum, the skin that separates the vagina and the anus.
Oh.
The peritoneum, the tissue that lines the abdominal walls and most internal organs, had been ruptured. She had a length of fabric torn from her shoulder strap and used it to hold between her legs and soak up the blood.
Oh, okay.
She walked the 4 hours with that between her legs, soaking up the blood, and she was bleeding a lot. So with those injuries, right, you could clearly see there
She
was
needed
something
help.
wrong with her. The police could have asked her and been like, "Hey, are you okay?" But they never did.
Oh, wow.
An inquest was filed on April 7th. Apparently, the police didn't learn about this crime until April 6th, though. According to the inquest and the transcript that was posted in the Times in April 1888, Mr. Wayne E. Baxter of the East Middlesex Coroner held an inquiry on Saturday the 7th, and it says, respecting the death of Emma Elizabeth Smith, age 45, a widow lately living at 18 George Street, Spitalsfield, who was alleged had been murdered. Chief Inspector West of the H Division of Police attended for the Commissioner of Police. It says Mr. George Hapslin, house surgeon, stated that when the deceased was admitted to the hospital, she had been drinking, but she was not intoxicating. She was bleeding from the head and ear and other injuries of a revolting nature. The deceased told him that 1:30 in the morning, she was passing near Whitechapel when she noticed some men coming towards her. She crossed the street to avoid them. They followed, assaulted her, took all her money. They committed the outrage. She was unable to say what instrument was used, nor could she describe her assailants, except that she said one of the youths was 19 years old.
Jeez.
Death insured on Wednesday morning, April 4th. Through per, through injuries set up by injuries, there's no suspects, and they were only made aware of it by the papers. So the police were not even made aware of this case until the papers released the story.
Wow.
I don't believe this was a Jack the Ripper case. He likes to cut. This was not.
Yeah.
She was not cut. She was just brutally, brutally, brutally attacked. But there are some people who believe that she was a Jack the Ripper victim.
Mm.
I don't believe so. A lot of people cite the cutting of the ear
Yeah.
is why. No. Um He was also quick with his kills, and in one point, there's 15 minutes between the kill and what he did to the victim. There isn't a lot of time. Like it's 15 minutes. Like police was walking a beat, and it takes him 15 minutes to walk said beat.
So he had 15 minutes.
He had
to do it.
15 minutes to do this specific kill, and the 15 minutes was not the second most brutal killing that Jack the
Mhm.
Ripper did. So it's highly doubt it was him.
Yeah.
Now there is a second one. This one they don't know if it's true or false. Either October or Christmas in 1887.
Hmm.
So again, don't even know if this is a real one. We don't know if it's a myth. It was an unknown woman to be found in Osborne Street. She was later called Fairy Faye. It was in an article in the New York Tribune, so it was reported in another country, not in England. It said the history of the reign of terror, which now paralyzes all of London with panic and fear, reaches back for a year. The mutilators first. So Jack the Ripper wasn't called Jack the Ripper in England when he was killing. He didn't get the name until later. They just called him the mutilator. His official name when he first started killing was the mutilator.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. And they called it the mutilation series.
Oh.
They did not call it the Jack the Ripper killings. They called it the mutilation series. The mutilator's first success achieved early in the month of October 1887, when in the dark hours of the morning, the frightfully lacerated body of a woman was found laying in a passageway of a narrow alley in the immediate vicinity of Bishopsgate Street. The victim was an elderly woman, gin-soaked, degraded, and lost. Now, no one appears to be aware of her real name, and there is no actual papers in England talking about this case. So again, this probably could be a myth. This victim is possibly a myth. So, and maybe they got the dates wrong because it was November 14th when a man named Mr. Pickergill, who was a member of parliament, brought up the existence of a woman being brutally murdered the Christmas before Emma Smith. And so there's that. So there's it's just a weird case. But oftentimes this victim that the New York Times brought up was considered a Jack the Ripper victim, but she's not a part of the canonical five. So back to August 30th, back to Polly's murder. There were cries for justice, so the police needed and wanted a suspect. So they began talking to sex workers in the area and women who would have been her friends to see if they knew of anyone that could do this. Many women brought up the name of Jack Pfizer because he was known as Leather Apron. And he was a boot something. I misspelled that. And he used sex. It's completely misspelled. He used.
I'm all like trying to see if I can help her. It's not.
He used sex workers, but he also blackmailed them and physically assaulted them pretty frequently. They were scared of him, and they told the police. Police and newspapers described him as more ghoulish and devilish brute that can be found in all the pages of shocking fiction. He actually went on when he heard he was a suspect in the murder.
Oh wow.
I don't actually believe it was him.
Guilty of something?
Well, yeah, I don't believe it was him. I think he hated women, but I don't think he was Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
In August 1888, the head of the Criminal Investigation Department of the Metropolitan Police Force resigned right before Polly was killed. So the Criminal Investigation Department was being run by detective inspectors, and their jobs was to investigate the crimes that finally occurred, instead of the Metropolitan Police Force that did beat walking. So at this time, London's police force was separated into two: the Metropolitan and the Criminal Investigation. Criminal Investigation solved all the crimes. Metropolitan did a bunch of beat work. Metropolitan police were the ones who ignored Emma Smith's crime. Criminal Investigations were the ones who were made aware of Emma Smith's murder after she had been murdered. So, kind of get the gist of the two. So, the head of the Criminal Investigations Department, a man named Robert Anderson, took over, and he worked for years in Secret Service. and he was placed as chief in August of 1888. Now, Anderson was a mess in 1888, along with everyone in this case.
Yeah.
He was so exhausted with work. When he was put in, he was on the verge of a mental breakdown.
Oh, jeez. Let's put somebody in with the mental breakdown fixing to take place.
And possibly a physical breakdown as well.
Mm.
So a doctor told him to take a couple of weeks off or he would die.
Oh, wow.
So right after this murder, they put in a man named Robert Anderson. They're like, he's a great person for this case. He's in the midst of possibly having a mental breakdown, and the doctor's like, you need to take a couple weeks off because you're going to die, my guy.
It's sad when a doctor has to tell you you need to take off time from work.
And so Robert Anderson left for Switzerland for 2 months.
Good for him.
And he left on September 7th. And on the day he left, another murder happened.
He's like, turn the plane around.
No, he was on a boat. No, we will talk more. Robert Anderson is one of those where I'm like, my guy. I feel like if Robert Anderson had actually been on the case, it might have actually been solved. Because he actually did. So remember that doctor I told you about? And I think it is Lewin. That doctor is an OG. He's literally like, okay, let's go re-look at the crime. I can look at the crime and I could try to solve it. Anderson actually listened to the doctor. If those two were put together and left to their own thing, I think they could have solved the case.
Yeah.
But it was just really bad timing. Or really good timing if you're Jack the Ripper, because
yeah. You got a doctor who's about to lose his crap. Oh, send him away for 2 months. Hey, guess what? Gonna kill again.
Yeah. The day he literally gets on his boat to leave, there's another murder. Jeez. So that's the end of part 1, and we're going to start part 2.
Yes. Need a nap. I'm over here going, what?
Oh.
No, I'm not falling asleep. I sit for so long, and I'm tired.
Okay, we're going to do a little bit of stretches, but then we're going to come back with a part 2.
Yeah. So we'll see you in a few.
See you in like 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Yeah. Literally 2 minutes.
A week for you, 2 minutes for us.
Yes. There we go. We'll make it so I hurt. Don't get old. Married orphan. Don't get a crawling killers.
Those are wise words.
Go, Rob.
Those are wide words from an old manager of ours.
Yes.
I have failed 2 of those.
Oh no.
Actually, I'm failing 3 of them. I am getting old. And I have a chronic illness. I did not marry an orphan.
No, she didn't, but my son did. So
Rob was really proud.
Doing good.
Rob was really proud.
Oh my Lord. Okay, we'll be back.
Bye. Guys.